Greetings, everyone. DFG here, Gideon's Flight. Hey, guys, I want to take a couple of moments and just take you on a quick historical journey and at the same time answer some questions that by now you would think everyone would clearly, you know the answers to, but yet, I still run across people who make erroneous statements concerning this particular subject, and then other people who flat out deny what is the truth in regards to this particular subject. And the subject that I'm going to talk to you about is really twofold. One is a basic question. Why was the Civil War fought? I'm talking about the 1861 to 1865 war between the North and the South, the Union and the Confederacy. Why was the Civil War fought? In high school, in probably junior high school, maybe even in elementary school now that I think about it, I was told that the war was fought to end slavery. That somehow these Northern Americans developed a conscience around, the mistreatment of so-called, at the time, colored people who were enslaved here in America, and that they just, do some kind of moral goodness. They wanted to, to free the black man so that America could be free of its original sin, as some of these, devils like Mitch McConnell, and others like to use when they're trying to whitewash the wickedness of their ancestors. So that's the first side of it. Why was it fought? And then the second side of it is that I want to talk a little bit in terms of, and I want you want to hear this. I'm going to take it right back to the reparations conversation. Does America truly owe the descendants of slaves reparations? Because you heard us say it, and I'm sure if you listen to my videos, you've heard me say it. But there's a lot of content creators who are saying the exact same thing. I don't need to tell you their names. If you care, then you know who they are already, and they're a lot more renowned than I am. But with that being said, I think we can bring some insight, and maybe for some of you, even some closure around this very sensitive subject, or these two very sensitive subjects. Why would the so-called colored man, African American, Negro, black man, think that this country owes them anything in regards to this country becoming what it became in terms of its power around the economy, and which leads to its ultimate wealth? What would make those Negroes think that you whites or your ancestors owe them any damn thing? And in fairness to you, talking about the whites, that's a good question. It's a good question. And so I thought about it. I said, who would be the most qualified person to share some insight on those two things? Why was the Civil War fought? And does reparation play a part in what made America the America that your ancestors, all the way down to yourselves, have been able to bask in its wealth? Did the so-called slaves have anything to do with that? So again, who would be probably the most qualified person outside of Yahuwah to answer that question? Well, guess what? I think I found out who it was. How about if I told you it's the 16th president of the United States of America? Yes, Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to read to you some of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. And this would have been 1865 here, Washington, D.C. And some of you guys may have heard it on announcements and people talking about it, school plays, whatever. But I want you to listen to it again. But this time, especially, white Americans, I want you to listen, with your ears this time, okay? And not with your resentment. And I want you to take down your defenses and just be open-minded and listen. Not open-minded about your decision, but listen to what your president had to say. The great emancipator, Abraham Lincoln. Here we go. Okay. Said this second appearing to take the oath of the president's office, there is less an occasion for extended address than was at the first. Then a statement somewhat in detail of a course to be pursued seemed fitting and proper. He's talking about the first inaugural address. Now, at the expiration of 4 years, during which the public declarations have been constantly called forth on every point and phase of the great contest, which still absorbs the attention and engrosses the energies of the nation, talking about the war, little that is new could be presented. The progress of our army, upon which all else chiefly depends, is as well known to the public as to myself, and it is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory to encouraging to all. With high hopes for the future, no prediction in regard to it is ventured. Okay? What he meant that the war was almost over. The Union had many, many successful victories, and it was just the last couple of battles here and there, but the war was pretty much still decided, was pretty much decided, but they still were fighting in some places, down south. All right? He goes on. He says, on the occasion corresponding, this is where the meat comes in. On the occasion corresponding to this 4 years ago, all thoughts were anxiously directed to an impending civil war. All dreaded it, talking about white folks, all sought to avert it, while the inaugural address, the first, was being delivered from this place, devoted altogether to saving the Union without war, okay? While the inaugural address was being delivered from this place, devoted altogether to saving the Union without war, insurgent agents were in the city seeking to destroy it without war, seeking to dissolve the Union and divide the effects by negotiations. Both parties predicated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other would accept war rather than to let it perish. And the war came. So now you just got your answer. You just got your answer to why the Civil War was fought. It was for the what? Abolishment of slavery? My friend. It was to save the Union. You just heard me. It was to keep the Union from dissolving. This is your president. You can read it for yourself. But this is what Mr. Abraham Lincoln, a white man, had to say about it. Let's go a little bit further. It goes on to say, 1/8 of the whole population were colored races, meaning copper-colored Hebrew Israelites who were right here in America when the Europeans first came. He says 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a particular and powerful interest. Those slaves, the colored ones, our ancestors. To strengthen, perpetuate, and extend this interest, talking about slavery, was the object for which insurgents would rend the Union, tear it up, even by war, while the government claimed no right to do no more than restrict the territorial enlargement of it. Again, you hear him saying they were not fighting to end slavery, they just didn't want slavery to be enlarged. In other words, they didn't want it to go out to the Western territories. You can read it. It's here. Okay? Let's go forward. The government claimed, this government that owes reparations, claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial enlargement of slavery. Neither party expected for the war the magnitude or the duration which it has already attained. Neither anticipated that the cause of the conflict might cease with, or even before the conflict itself should cease. Each looked for an easier triumph and a result less fundamental and less astounding. Both read the same Bible and prayed to the same God, who was not Yahweh. That's probably white Jesus who they were praying to, by the way. And each invoked his own aid, talking about white Jesus, against the other. It might be strange that any men should dare to ask a just God assistance in wringing their bread. Now watch this. They would ask a just God. They would ask a just God assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces. This was Abraham Lincoln saying that America was getting its wealth, getting its bread from the sweat and toil of slaves. And you say we're not owed reparations. That we had nothing to do with making America the great country it became. The wealthiest country on the planet. We had nothing to do with that. Here your president is saying to you guys in writing that it's an absolute fact that we did. But let me go further. But let us judge not that we be not judged. Of course, you know what I'm saying? No one wants to be held accountable for their wickedness. Even today, nobody wants to accept responsibility for paying reparations to the, American descendants of slaves. No one wants to be, I don't have nothing to do with that. I ain't writing no check. But let us not judge that we be not judged. The prayers of both could not be answered, that of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purposes. Woe to the world because of offenses, for it must needs be offenses come. But woe to the man by whom those offenses come. And you've heard me say it in some of my past videos. These things that are happening right now in this country, these people dying and slaughter and debauchery and embracing all kind of wicked behavior, from homosexuality to abortion to transsexual, transgender, to creating, to cloning animals, cloning people, marrying dogs, men marrying men, etc., etc., etc. He said, woe unto that wicked generation, because offenses are gone to come. And then he goes on. He said, we shall suppose that American slavery is one of those offenses in which the providence of God must needs come, but which, having continued through his appointed time, he now wills to remove, in that he gives to both the North and South this terrible war, as woe due to those by whom the offense came. And you think these things that are going on in this country has nothing to do with us, or your behavior towards us, your attitudes towards us, the killing of our sons, the mass incarceration of us, the putting Planned Parenthood clinics in our neighborhoods, encouraging our young women to go out and slaughter and kill their babies, killing the seed of young black men in more cases than not. And you say your hands are clean, there's no blood on your hands. Yet you have been the administrator of all of these things. Let's go on. He said both, okay. And he says, shall we discern therein any departure from the divine attributes which believers in a living God always ascribe to him? Finally, we hope, fervently we pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continues until all the wealth, check this out. This is what he says, guys. This is very important. Say, yet, if God wills that it continues until all the wealth piled up by the bondsmen's 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn with the last shall be paid by another drawn with swords, as was said 3,000 years ago, talking about Exodus, and them not releasing our people with reparations, and won't do it now. So still it be must say the judgment of the Lord is true and righteous altogether. And you think about another example. He said, okay, you guys whipped our ancestors. You beat our ancestors to death in many cases. And so he gave you back in return a civil war. He gave you swords and guns to slaughter over 1 million, Americans, including many blacks who fought on both sides of the war, unfortunately. But look at you put crack in our community, and then Yahweh allowed opioids in your community. That's the trade-off. That's your lash, versus